Welcome to Module 6 discussion. This week I chose a college football team for my speed and agility program. One of the things we think about kind of sport at a glance, we're doing our needs analysis, the differences in the positions. Linemen versus wide receivers are going to have slightly different needs. I don't like the term skill athletes versus linemen. Everything's a skill position as far as I'm concerned, but they are going to have different needs based on their position. So we want to keep that in mind as we build a program. Obviously mostly anaerobic sport. It's repeatability of that 100% is very important in football. So I think I've seen studies, the average plays, 5 to 7 seconds, something like that. So we want to keep that in mind as we build this. Explosive and reactive. A lot of cognitive things happening at the same time, so we want to keep that in mind. And also, final worth mentioning, speed and agility, not conditioning. Those are obviously a little bit different. Another thing that we want to ensure is that it does complement practice and it doesn't distract. It should be blended. I like to say if we do our agility training correctly, they won't really know they're even doing it. It's built in. Some of it can be in the warm-up, which we'll talk in another slide. Some of it could be in individual work when they first cut off. That's how I've preferred to do it in the past. We want to make sure that it does complement our strength training, agility, and decision-making we mentioned. And I'm a big fan of low dose, minimal effective dose. Like what's the least amount we can do to this athlete to get the outcome that we're after. I like this slide. I think before we have a conversation, I think it's important to define a few things. So I threw these in, got these from the textbook, of course. It's about speed, ability to reach that high velocity and change of direction, obviously changing direction quickly and then being able to reach a high velocity in most cases. And agility, of course, having the big response to stimuli, making it different, either visual or verbal, auditory in nature, and so which has a cognitive effect, which most sports it's useful. And then velocity, I thought the textbook did a good job. I've never heard that where it basically said, speed with direction. That's really simple. I love fewer words. I don't need a bunch of crazy explanations. Just give me the bullet points, if you will, so I can apply it. But I like that velocity, speed with direction. This is just kind of a general guideline slide. I like to have a rough idea of what we're talking about here. So, for me, I'm a low dose guy. I also put in here from the textbook, talks about 0.6 to 0.8 seconds can take to produce a strength. Talk about a lot of sports happens really from zero, right? We're trying to make it as close to zero as possible, up to 0.2 seconds, meaning that they may not be, the full strength may not be of use. Now, what's notable, though, is what percent of their strength is used. So that if I increase my strength and I'm not allowed to get to full strength, I'm still going to have more than you, right? Or more than the person that doesn't. So although that's important, I also think it's a distinction that we need to make that you don't often hear people talk about. Intensity, interesting, right? So if we're doing these halfway, are we doing anything at all? So I think intensity's got to be high on all of these. We can supplement the periodization by jacking with the volume, but I think the intensity on these has to be right high. Otherwise, we're just wasting time. I do like 72 hours between the sessions if we can get there, and I like smaller cycles, like 4 weeks, rinse, repeat, 4 weeks, rinse, repeat, especially in season, which is what we're talking about here for the football guys. And as always, we want this to follow a general warm up. Some people do like a five-yard jog, 5-yard either 50% sprint, 5-yard deceleration. Those are great. Or a couple sets. We talk about throws or jumps back on the plyo side, but if we're doing any of that kind of stuff, that can also be a nice little easy warm up. But make sure this is following a general warm up. Okay, so one of the things that I would start with, sprint skips, there's all kinds of variations of this. I would put this in the team warm-up, and I'll talk about that on another slide, but we really want a minimal contact down. I think about driving that knee up, common errors or elbows out. So a lot of times I'll just ask have them to cue their elbows in a little bit, but let's watch this. Now, are we getting anything out of this? What kind of intensity level is that right there? Like a 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 6 out of 10? So it's like, are we wasting our time here with this? Or is that intensity enough? So I think about that a lot when I talk about agility training. This is a great one. I like this one from all positions. We have our athletes spin and flip and do all kinds of things. We can also do like a crawl, bear crawl, run. So, but getting them to be a little bit more mobile, get them to be a little bit more reactive. We can do this with sound, we can do this with a light, we can do this with all kinds of things. And just basically having, and this kid's a boxer, you can tell he moves really well in a phone booth. Common errors, you see his elbows out there, he overstrides, these kinds of things. We'll watch that one more time. It's a pretty good job of getting up out of the ground, and then just wheels kind of fall off of it past that. Kind of the same thing here. We have him start in different positions. I call this just a supine start. We'll actually have him flip to the right and flip to the left, and we'll have him, have to understand that a lot of times there'll be 2 whistles for one direction, 2 whistles for the other direction. That way they have to think, oh, which way am I supposed to go? Just like real life scenarios sometimes on a football field. Again, that's a pretty good job of getting up there. Definitely not a sprinter, though. You can tell by the way he moves. But he's really good inside small spaces. Now, this is something similar. We use reactive. So basically, I'm just going to have point, tell him which way to go. We go up, down, backwards, forwards, have him hit the ground, have him jump in the air, as you can see here. A lot of times we'll use a football and throw it and hit the ground, then they gotta pick it up. So, he does a pretty good job here, pretty slow. I mean, obviously he's demoing this, but again, if this were a college level athlete, like what's my percentage effort right here? I'm thinking, what do you think? 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 here. We're not seeing like wide open. So to me, this is a waste of time if this is our intensity level. I think when we're doing these, it's low dose, so the intensity has to be very high. Just my opinion. Okay, so this is a mirror drill. I really like this drill. Basically, I'm the camera behind the camera, and I'm going to shuffle from side to side. There's all kind of variations on this drill. We can treat it like a pass rush situation. We can treat it like we're trying to get by the athlete. We can pass block with this. There's all kinds of ways to use the mirror drill. So we'll just play it here, and you can kind of watch and move. He actually does a pretty good job. Common errors here, they get their feet too close together, or they get their feet too wide. Either one of those is not going to be good. You can tell he played high school football lineman for I don't know how many years, had a scholarship actually, didn't want it, lost 20 kilos, and now he's a boxer. And he does really well inside of a phone booth, right? And I'm telling you, you get in the ring with this kid, he'll clock you. So he does a pretty good job there. Common errors, like I said, is basically the base. I was really glad to see incline sprints in the book. We use these a lot. Almost every athlete that we train does some form variation in incline sprints. I probably don't know enough about sprint mechanics. Well, I know I don't. So I don't coach a whole lot of this. I just talk to them about overstriding. I talk to them about their arm action. And truthfully, that's probably about the end of my knowledge when it comes to sprinting. But anyway, we'll play this here so you can watch. Go. So that I think about common areas. Now, one of the things you'll watch, he almost fell because the road was wet, so we had to be kind of careful. But one of the things you'll watch, now I had him start, at a square stance, and he'll take turns stepping with that right foot, and then he'll do another one where he steps with the left foot. So positionally, like he plays outside backer, if he's in a backer position, a lot of times I'll have my athletes just their positional starts, because I feel like we get a little bit more specificity there, especially when we're in season. Okay. But you'll notice he's still a little upright, isn't he? Even for an incline sprint, he's still just a little bit more upright than we'd like to see. And the pro agility is pretty common, 5-10-5. A lot of people, we can make this reactive as well, where they go on a hand clap, they can go on a hand signal. So there's all kinds of different things that we can do with this. Common errors, they tendency to loop too wide. They don't go straight. He's got a shuffle down, which is pretty good. But watch him here. He shuffles those steps, right? Shuffles his steps right before he gets to that line. So he's probably a little eccentrically weak. And then he does a little banana turn there like you would do in baseball, right? So we want to keep that linear, obviously, and watch out for that little curve right there. And so that's not going to be what we want. Just an example of some sled toes. Now, I've seen different studies say different things about percentages of body weight. I've read 20%, I've read 30%. Honestly, I just kind of put my eye on it and then just keep track of it. But I usually start them around 20% and progress to 30% throughout that little mesocycle. So let's get one of these going here. There we go. Sorry. Yeah, now if you'll notice, this is my opinion, okay, but he's a lot more positionally correct here than he was on the sprint. This same kid, right? So when we did the sprint up a hill, like this is a better position for him and probably a pretty decent weight. I don't know. But I like this position of him better than I've seen anything else that we've done. So for deceleration drill, this is something common we used to do in college when I played in college football. But we would be, as linebackers, we would sprint towards, have to touch a cone, backpedal, and catch a pass. So you can do all kinds of things inside the confines of this. This is what I talk about a lot. I know I'm talking a lot this series, but we can build this stuff inside of the football program. That's what I would recommend, so they don't even know that they're doing it. So this is kind of your standard deceleration drill. Now I'll have them backpedal, turn, and spin. And a lot of times what I'll do too is have them, I'll hold a hand up and I'll point which way I want them to turn. And so they have to be aware. And I think the research shows too, the more I can plug the brain into this stuff, the more applicable it is to the sporting situation. And so I'll have him hold, see, he has to look at me and I'll point which way he's got to go. So I think that's a really good drill as well. And then I think something that goes underappreciated sometimes is just good old-fashioned sprinting from a positional start. I'll have the linebacker start at a 2-point, sometimes at 3. Just have them change it up a little bit. Same thing with running back. Start from where you start from, and let's work on our acceleration. Let's work on these things. And I think one of the things that we see, we just don't do enough sprinting, in my opinion. So we'll watch. This is nothing fancy, just like a 10-yard blast out of a stance, right, for a lineman kid. So yeah. So for frequency and volume considerations, I think about a couple of sessions a week. I think less is best. I like around 120 to 150 yards of speed work. I like the 10 to 15 minutes of agility work that's kind of built in. And then I do like some time off. So that 4th week, we might still keep some agility going, or about 50% of that. But basically, I want that to be kind of an off week. I just think that we just overdo things. Here's an example of my program. I actually program differently for speed and agility. I actually like to start with a little bit more volume and then decrease each week. I think we get a little bit more bang for our buck. So if you look down to week 4 where it says skills and drills only, it's a little bit of a lighter week. And then we come back week 1 and we hit them with the agility, and we hit them with the 150 yards of speed work. Again, I think the agility we can do as a team situation, as we see here, 5 to 10 minutes in team, and then we can peel off into individual, and we can be very specific to the positional needs of the athlete, which is going to be completely different from a lineman perspective. They do a lot more handwork than you would think. And whereas receivers, we may have them hit a point on a field, catch a ball, hit a point on a field, crank 90 degrees, or like a hitch route or go route, or whatever we're having them do that day, a corner, crank a corner, go to the post, whatever. And so my point is those individual needs can be addressed when we peel off, and we're still getting it built into the practice session. I think about 150 yards of speed work is where I like. It's kind of a sweet spot, I think, between 120 and 150. And the research in the textbook's real similar, that if you add up the volume, it's in that ballpark. I do like to rest 30 to 45 seconds between the reps. I like 2 to 3 minutes between sets. So again, what does that 150 yards mean? Well, if we do pro agility 5, 10, 5, okay, that's 20 yards. So if I do a block of 5 or a block of 4, okay, well, that's 80 yards. I'm halfway, right? Or I'm 100 yards. Now I got to be real specific about what it is that I want to do. So I think about that as well as we progress. I do like to put the speed work and the resistance training days together. So the agility, I like to go with team, as we mentioned here. On the team days, we can put it in the warm-ups, we can put it in the individual. But for the speed work, I like to do that on the resistance training days because I can check my OLE, right? What's going on with my Olympic variations, and I can put all that stuff together and maybe do some complex work. Could also do a little bit of PAP work as far as potentiation. I do like to cut the volume down day 2 because you have to think about it. We're in season, and so they're going to have a game Saturday. Okay, so if we train on Monday and Thursday, that fits real well within the confines of the research. So I would back that volume off just a little bit midweek, and then week 2 decrease 10%, week 3 decrease by 10%, week 4 skills and drills only, and come back and hit them pretty hard that week 1. I think it fits nicely into an 8-10 week college program as well. As far as modifications for other sports, you talk about more change of direction. So if I were to pick the soccer team, so they're already doing so much change of direction, right? So much of soccer's drills built into the practice is all of that. So do I, as a strength conditioning coach, want to do more of what they already do, or do I want to find something else to sprint in there? So I personally would not do a whole lot more change of direction with these guys. I would probably focus, maybe on the reactive component, the agility component, and then just keep my strength and conditioning programs going. I think the big thing to remember, speed work's not conditioning, agility is not conditioning. I think about them being part of the picture. So we talk about Olympic weightlifting variations. It's fairly well studied. So I would keep my OLE variations going during the season. To keep my intensity for this stuff at 100%, it's got to be. I think we're wasting our time if we don't. And again, most of it can be built into practice. And here are my references. Okay, and I think that's everything. Thank you very much.